Happy Thursday and welcome to another edition of the Wolff Den presented by Win Again Academy. Mark Moyer doing some great networking events. Had an excellent one yesterday with Brandon Steiner and Willie Randolph. For more information, check out winagainacademy.com. I actually met our next guest at the Win Again Academy event. So welcome Darrin Steele to the Wolff Den. How are you today?
Hey, I'm doing well. How are you, Matt?
Doing great. Appreciate your time here today. For those in the audience that don't know who you are, I always find it's best for you to give your own introduction so you can tell people. So let everyone know who you are and what you do.
All right. So I've done a lot of things. I think for your audience, they'll be interested in a few things. So I was a college athlete and then competed in track and field after that, trying to make the Olympic team. Came up short, did decathlon, but I found the sport of bobsled through that. And so I competed in the 98 games and the 2002 games in bobsled. After that, joined Home Depot and moved up into I was a store manager for a number of years. So, but then I was hired to run the bobsled skeleton organization for the U.S. So I was CEO for 12 years until 2019. Right after that, spent a year finishing my my dissertation. So completed that back in December of 2020. And then most recently in December started with Ace Hardware Corporation. And so I work with pretty big territory here in Colorado, Nebraska, and got 47 stores and basically I'm a business consultant of sorts with them. And so, yeah, a lot of different things. And, you know, it's amazing how many seemingly unrelated experiences you can draw on, as you move through your career.
Yeah, a lot there, and going back and forth a little bit, right? It's so let's go from the start. Where did you go to school and where were you in track?
So I did my undergrad at Eastern Illinois University and competed in track and field for them. So it was like I said, decathlete. Still have their.
Is that the Salukis or is that Northern?
Salukis are Southern Illinois.
Southern Illinois.
So Eastern Illinois is the Panthers.
Panthers.
Yeah. So yeah, competed for them. It was great experience. Then moved out to the Northern California after that to work with a coach at Berkeley and some really good athletes. Trying to make the team, and ended up ending that as I transitioned into bobsled.
And how close were you to making the team as a decathlete?
Well, in my mind, I was pretty close. If you look on the results, it's not going to indicate that. But I think, I think the potential was in there if I would have found the right combination of training and staying healthy and that kind of thing. But, it's really hard to not overtrain as a decathlete because you've got 10 events and, the combination of what you focus on is, it's very strategic. It's like a chess game and, just wasn't able to keep my body healthy. And, I qualified for the trials in 92, competed in the trials in 96, but, ended up dropping out with an injury that I had going into it.
And the decathlon, I mean, the last thing I remember is it was Dan and Dave who were they were big, right?
They were. That was a long time ago, Matt. But yeah, Dan and Dave, they had Reebok commercials, Dan versus Dave, and that was leading into the 92 games.
Okay.
So that was a while ago, and Dan went on to be the gold medalist, and most recently Ashton Eaton, gold medalist for the U.S. And
I think he's a Gator too, isn't he?
No, he went to Oregon.
Oregon.
Yeah.
I'm trying to think. I know we had a couple really good performers in the Olympics. So
yeah, you guys got a great history.
yeah, they got a great track program. What made you become a decathlete? I mean, as you're growing up, how do you find that that's something that you want to do? Obviously, you're a great athlete, and you can understand that, and you're fast and strong. But how does one get to be a decathlete growing up?
Well, it's interesting because it's almost counterintuitive in a lot of ways for a number of decathletes, and a lot of us got into it for the wrong reasons, which is, I loved the sport, I loved all the events, but I wasn't good enough in any single event to get a college scholarship, and so naively you look at the events in the decathlon and you say, hey, these aren't as that long jump's not as good as what the specialists are doing, and I'm closer to that, and so you just gloss over the fact that there's 10 events in 2 days, and it takes an awful lot of athleticism. But fortunately, I mean, that's why I was attracted to it, because I thought, okay, this is something maybe I can continue and to compete in college, because I just loved every event. And I mean, I got an identical twin brother, and we laugh about this time that we just figured out the Fosbury flop, and we were young. I mean, maybe 8th grade or something, and we would spend hours out on the track just high jumping it, but we were only going 4 feet 8, maybe 4 9, and but it was just, the move was fun, and just being able to challenge yourself and lift yourself, and then it kind of repeated itself with the pole vault, and the hurdles, and all the events. It was just a lot of fun to do them, and it started with just loving them, and then eventually you keep working and you get a little better and a little better, and fortunately I was a late bloomer, and so I did end up growing and then having some skills, and got with a good program at Eastern, and so I just continued with it, and you never get bored because there's always something to be working on in the decathlon.
Yeah, I have a twin brother too, and he is a triathlete. He's done a number of half Ironmans, and he's training for his first full Ironman. Is that in the Olympics, the full triathlon?
Triathlon is, that's an Olympic sport. Yep. Yeah. There's an Olympic distance.
Right, Olympic distance. Sure. He's done a bunch. I wonder why they don't have the Ironman distance in there. I think it's something, right? To be able to, and those are 3 completely different things.
Right.
Swimming, running, and bicycling. It's an incredible feat. Yeah.
I've never been drawn to those kinds of events. I'm an explosive, fast twitch guy, and the long distance stuff just I like seeing people do it, but that's where it ends for me.
Dahlia's a twin also, and glad. Thanks for the support. Did you ever run a marathon? I mean, what's the longest distance you've done?
Longest distance was I did a 7-mile run back in my hometown. It was, I think it was even before college. I was in the military right out of college, and so I had a year break before I started college, and so I did 7-mile. It was the Bix 7 in the Quad Cities in Iowa. So that was the longest, and let's just say I didn't win.
Yeah, well, you made it. I mean, so that's, people think you're doing 26 miles, but 7 miles. That's still a pretty good run. You start thinking about driving 7 miles, and you'd be like, "Am I gonna go without a car to this place?" Forget about the bicycle. What was your best event?
It changed over time. So when I was first starting, it was the 100 meters and the 400 were probably my 2 best. And then, as I got a little better, the discus really started taking off for me. Hurdles were solid, but by the end, it was probably the 400 and the discus.
What's the 400 in the discus? Yeah. So speed and strength. But what's the number one characteristic you would say that all decathletes have? Like what's the thing that's most needed to be a decathlete?
Well, it's a lot easier to teach an explosive speed guy to do the events than it is to get a distance guy to do the same thing. And, with the exception of the 1500, everything is speed and explosion.
Yeah.
And so, you have to have that kind of, as a starting point. And, the less you have of the speed, the more you need of the skill events. And you can pick up, if the 100 is not your best event, but you're an 18-foot pole vaulter, you're going to make up a lot of points there. And so it's a long road because, the speed is, that's the 100 and the 400 and the hurdles, and it translates in the long jump and the runway and the pole vault. And so, it's easier to teach the skills if you have the years in front of you to do it than it is to teach somebody speed.
And that translates very well into bobsledding, right? Because speed, and that's what they're looking for, and that's why were you drawn to bobsled, or was bobsled drawn to you?
They were drawn to me. When I say they, it was really one guy. And so I mentioned I was in the military, and so I was in their sports program that they had just started, I believe in 94, 95-ish, the world-class athlete program. And so I was involved with that. And I went to, they were doing a PR event. And so they brought all the athletes together. And at that event, I met a guy that was that was trying to make the bobsled team. And he was a driver. And he saw me doing, my different events for the photographer. And he approached me and said, "Hey, you should be pushing a bobsled." And
what was your first reaction?
I laughed. And it's one of the few sports. It's really unique in this regard that you can actually pick up a completely different sport that you've never done at all, and potentially be on the Olympic team in 2 years, or one if you're Lauren Williams. But the thing about it is, you can only do that with athletes that are coming to you with 90% of the skills that you need, and you need to be an athlete you've been working on your speed and your strength for a very long time at a high level, and so you have to come with most of the skills, and then it's really just about teaching the fine tuning of the technique, and so it's a great sales pitch for getting athletes into the sport. You can't do that with any other sport that I'm aware of. Not
really. We just saw DK Metcalf run in the trials.
Yep.
And as fast as he is, he was not close. It's a very good accomplishment, but it's not the same. That's not to say, it's just different. Not to say a sprinter could come and play football. I know you've had people try, like they thought Usain Bolt was going to maybe play another sport. I played basketball all my life, and I played with football players who are excellent, but they still wouldn't sniff the court against the professionals. So it's really something else. Were you in right away? Mentally, you're saying I'm going to give this a shot right away, or you're like,
oh no, I wasn't. No, because I was still focused on trying to make the summer team, and when you're doing a sport and trying to be one of the best in the world, it's really difficult to think about plan B. And, that's one of the challenges that athletes still have when it comes to transitioning. When you retire from being an athlete, it is a difficult transition. Part of it is it's difficult to be working on, the things that you could be working on so that you can transition nicely into another career, because that focus has to be, just so you have to be, pretty myopic to maximize potential the way that you need to in athletics. And so, it's important to do, but it's understandable why it doesn't happen. And so, no, I mean, it was in the back of my head, but, I really wasn't looking into it or building, trying to learn anything about it. It was kind of like, well, I'll cross that bridge when I get to it, if I have to. But hopefully, I'm going to be doing decathlon for the next, 8 years.
I actually got some thoughts on that. A couple of thoughts. Can someone do both? I mean, why can't you do summer and winter if they're kind of similar stuff? Mm-hmm. Is that possible? We've never seen it before, have we?
Yeah, you see it. It's well,
I mean, I guess it's a similar thing, like indoor or outdoor.
Yeah, I mean, the reason you don't see it much is because you don't see that many athletes that are at a high level in both. And so, Lolo Jones is a good example of someone that went back and forth at a high level. And biggest challenge she had was, optimally, you want to weigh a lot more in bobsled than you do in track and field, right? So, I imagine that was an obstacle that she had to deal with. And I think we've seen it probably more on the women's side. I went back and forth and tried to make the 2000 team as well in decathlon after the 98 games. And it was interesting. You could have done a case study in terms of how the body changed by doing those different sports. I didn't make it, didn't come close. But it was really interesting because, like, my first practice out, I couldn't believe how much just natural turnover I had on the track. I didn't have to make much of an effort to run, really fast, because the turnover was so great. And even though I was weighing more than I had as a track athlete, I was able to high jump higher than I had been when I left the sport. My long jump, same thing. I put like almost a foot on my long jump personal best, right out of the gate. And I think it was, when you're pushing against resistance the way that we do in bobsled, you're tapping into, hamstring and
different muscles, right?
Yeah. And so it just, but it certainly made me wonder, man, I wonder what I could have done if I'd understood, that kind of training. And I do believe at some point you're going to see track athletes, pushing a bobsled type device as a training tool.
That's interesting.
Yeah. Because go ahead.
No, finish your thought.
Well, I was just going to say, in terms of training tools, you do see, resistance training, and you see, overspeed training with bungee cords and things like that. But
train in the pool?
Pool for resistance, I suppose. But the thing is, when you push a sled on a push track, for instance, that's on a hill, and that's a training tool that bobsled uses. It's really the only time that I've ever seen where you're getting resistance at the beginning, and overspeed at the end, because you're going downhill and you have to get in. And by the way, you're not using your arms, to kind of counterbalance and take off the load. So your glutes and your hamstrings and your hip flexors, they're all getting taxed in a way that's different than what you see when you're doing any of the other, training. And so there's something to that, and we'll see. I think at some point someone's going to figure that out and start using it as a training tool.
Yeah, I think it's probably on the way, or if they're not doing it already. If we talk about DK Metcalf, he was 80 pounds heavier than the guy who won the race. I mean, that's crazy in racing, right? I mean, think about that. Think about someone being 80 pounds heavier or lighter on a bobsled. It's
right. Yeah, you get to. I mean, it's huge, and I gotta say, I mean, Metcalf, I watched that race, and I think if you understand track and sprinting, you didn't look at that like, oh well, that was a waste, or he embarrassed himself, or anything like that. I mean, no. I was so impressed with that guy. One, because 10:36, 10:37, that's flying, especially for a guy that size. That is unbelievable. But mostly because what you tend to see is a lot of guys talking smack about what they can do, and the fans talking smack about what this guy can do. And man, can you imagine if this guy played football, or if that football player ran track? And this guy, he's like, all right, let's do it. I mean, he put it on the line.
Yeah.
And he had little to gain and a lot to lose. And that was a ballsy move. And I got huge respect for him for doing that.
And he, I don't think he's going to pursue it in a way that, too much, but he could shave time off just in this, in the technique and the start. So,
there's no question.
He hasn't done it before. It's like he's not used to it.
No, he compared to what guys typically have going into that level race, coming into an Olympic season, he had, hardly any of the training, and just watching his technique, no way he should have been that close at the beginning of the race. For one, he's too tall. Bolt is not that close to the front typically in a race. But where Bolt kind of, gets into his transition and is tall and running and really takes advantage of, that 6'6" frame. Metcalf didn't really transition in that way. And so, I'm sure coaches are looking at him like, man, I'd like to get a hold of this guy, because you could lengthen his stride and take off, more time, and he's not training like a track athlete. So yeah, that's why that time is so impressive, because that's just, the potential is big. I mean, he's not leaving football, and I don't think he should, but
he got a lot of money.
But the guy's impressive.
Yeah, very. Speaking of impressive, is Bolt the greatest Olympian you've ever seen? Most exciting, right?
It's so hard to do that because there's different events, right? So,
I was just thinking, like a Michael Phelps, that was exciting too. And then you got even on the women's side, gymnastics.
Right. I mean, really impressive. I mean, the way that he was able to destroy records that, had not been touched. I mean, okay, it took Michael Johnson a very long time to take care of the 200 meters. And Bolt comes in and just, destroys it. So yeah, what he did was unbelievable. Yeah, I mean, he's definitely the most impressive 100, 200 sprinter that I've ever seen in my life.
I think I don't know, in the U.S., does the Summer Olympics get more attention than the Winter Olympics? We do much better in that, better performing.
Well, it's a lot bigger. I mean, there's a lot more sports, a lot more events, and so TV wise, Winter Games does really well, and so. But just looking at the number of participants, Summer Games is quite a bit bigger.
Yeah, I like them both. I'm excited to watch. I hope it's be really weird. What do you think is going to happen this year for the summer?
Yeah, I mean, you almost have to trudge through it, and depending on how the cameras look at, you're going to be you are going to have a domestic audience, right? So the Japanese people will be there, and hopefully it will be structured in a way that, you don't lose kind of that audience energy that you feel at events. But for the athletes, they don't compete for the audience. That might help them, but chances are, they're so focused and they're so in the moment that, that they're probably not noticing the audience until the end of whatever event or sport that they're doing anyway. And so I don't think it's going to impact, the athletes. I think they're going to be just fine.
Does it diminish their accomplishments if it's changed? Is there anything athletically, competitively, that's going to be at a disadvantage?
I don't think so. I mean, we pushed it back a year, and a lot of uncertainty, and that sucks. But it's the pinnacle of sport, and so for athletes, they make the adjustments and they focus on the event and they deal with whatever jump through whatever hoops they got to jump through. But in my mind, no, I don't think it's going to diminish anything. I don't see. It'd be one thing if half the nations, weren't coming because of COVID. Okay, well, then you could argue that we didn't have the best athletes in the world competing the way that we normally do. But I don't see that as a factor, and time will tell. But I'm optimistic.
Well, let's talk about your Olympic experience. When did you decide you're going to give it a shot? And how long did it take you to realize that you had a shot to make it and go from there?
Well, so I didn't make, the 96 team in summer. And so, the Army contacted me shortly after that and said, look, the process is we're going to out-process you from active duty here, unless you're interested in trying bobsled, because they've been talking to Bill Tavares was the guy's name that had been trying to recruit me, and they've been talking with him, and he was selling me on bobsled, and so I really didn't have a better plan at the time, and I thought, yeah, okay, I'll do this. And in my mind, I'm thinking that'll buy me some time to figure out, what the hell I'm going to do next. And I dropped out of the trials because of an injury, right? So it's not like I was feeling, fresh and ready to go. I had an injury to recover from. So I really didn't think I'd be able to do that much in the sport when I first got into it. And so, it was later that summer that I went to, camp, and it was interesting. The injury that I had, it turned out that a lot of it was because of, I think, the rotational, forces that I had from, throwing the shot and the disc, and so just running in a straight line, that almost helped me to recover, because I was, kind of stimulating, the blood flow to those areas, and not, kind of putting the forces on that were doing the damage. And so I recovered fairly quickly from the injury. And I loved everything about the sport. But I hadn't been down a hill yet. And so I tested well, and, I love the atmosphere, just a bunch of type A's giving each other a lot of crap and riding each other. And so, I love that.
Are you afraid? Are you a heights, roller coaster, speed kind of guy? Were you?
Yeah. I mean, I like all that stuff. So I wasn't worried about, there's always a fear factor. It's one thing to, like roller coasters. But if you're in a roller coaster and it's got a chance of crashing, and maybe you do crash in a roller coaster, you might have second thoughts about the next time you get in, even if you like the thrill. And that's the difference, I think. So yeah, I showed a lot of potential, and like I said, I tested well, but I had no experience. So I didn't make the team, right away. but the guy that had recruited me in, Bill, he was doing training because he wasn't on the national team yet. And so he asked me to go with him to Latvia because they have a track there and the Army was funding it and I needed the experience. And so he took me there. And first time down the track, he just had me sit in the sled. And, it turns out that track is one of the, I don't want to say one of the roughest, but it is not a roller coaster. This is they're really tight turns. They don't even let 4-man sleds on it because the turns are so tight that a 4-man probably isn't going to get down to the bottom. And so I just sat in the sled and, oh my God.
Reminds me when I took my twin brother and showed him how to drive stick.
Yeah.
And he was going like this, and it was like probably a very similar experience.
Yeah, it's pretty brutal. And the thing is, in a 2-man sled, which is what we were in, even though I was a rookie and didn't know what the hell I was doing and sat in the sled, I didn't even push, I still have to stop us. I'm the guy on the brakes, right? But I don't know where we are. And I'm pretty sure we're about to die because I feel we're up on 2 runners and we're about to go over, but we don't. And we're getting knocked around. And it's loud and it's violent. We get to the bottom and I asked him what happened. He goes, "What do you mean?" I said, "Did you lose the steering? I thought we were about to die." And he said, "Nah, that was a pretty good run."
Oh, that's funny.
Yeah, and he might have been, BSing me, but I was, riding in the sled back up to the hill because you load them in a truck and you go back to the top. This is not an exaggeration. I was thinking the entire time, how the hell do I get out of this sport, and how do I not take another run ever, and still maintain some dignity?
Yeah.
Right. And, and there was nothing. I had nothing. So we get to the top, and my anxiety is through the roof because we're for sure going to die. And I had, there was no way to walk away from the sport with, any kind of dignity. I'd be regretting it for the rest of my life. And so I just said, well, I guess I die in Latvia.
Yeah.
And we got in and we took probably 75 trips that week. And it probably took 25 before I didn't expect to crash during the run. And I actually started to enjoy it.
Yeah, that's not terrible. How long did it take you to become an Olympic athlete in the bobsled?
Okay, so that was the 96, 97 season. And so I went straight from there. I was home for a day, and the coach called and needed me in Europe. And so I was brought over as the alternate. By the end of that season, I was on the national team. And then
there's a couple teams, right? I mean, each
there were 3. Yeah, there were 3 teams on tour that year, and so I was on the USA 3, and
they can all qualify. It's based on qualifications, not the best X amount of sleds.
Well, each nation earns a certain number of quota spots. So you might, the top teams are going to have 3 competitors or 3 teams in each discipline. And so that's the way it is now. Back in 2000 or in 98, we could qualify 3 teams, but only 2 competed. And so you had to, have a race once you get to the games or some selection process. And so, so I made the national team then the following season for the, Olympic season, and, was on USA 2. And we made it to the games and competed and got 12th in the 4-man, and it was just an unbelievable experience.
Oh man, what was the best part of the experience? Was it walking at the beginning with all the other athletes? Was it the first time going down? What was the best?
It's hard to. I can never decide if it was the opening ceremonies, walking through, because that's something that I wish everybody could experience, because, just the buildup, and, you're wearing your nation's colors and USA, and you walk through the tunnel, and there's a stadium that's just packed with people, and it's loud, and they're cheering, and that's when it hit me as we're walking around, that holy crap, I'm representing my nation. Like these people are like looking at us and looking at me to make them proud in the sport. Holy crap. I mean, it really, the weight of it, really hit me during the opening ceremonies, and it was just an amazing experience. But then that first competition, just, I was thinking a lot of things you shouldn't think as an athlete, and never had a problem. I was always really mentally, I was able to focus and be, really kind of in the moment and hyped up and all that. And I actually had to calm myself down getting warmed up for that first heat, because the adrenaline was just off the charts. And but walking out to the line, you got your helmet on, and you're walking out there. And as I'm getting down in position on the start or on the push bar, I remember thinking to myself, okay, you've done this hundreds of times at this point. But this is the only one that counts.
The only one that counts. Yeah.
This is the one you are going to be judged on, for the rest of your life in this sport. Doesn't matter how many times you did it right. So I was thinking, man, if you screw this up, this is not going to be good. And you don't want to be, that's the last thing you want to be thinking about. So that first push, it was decent. But to be honest, I was being kind of safe, on the load, and making sure that the technique was sound, just because there was so much riding on it, and that was the only one that was like that. The other three were, it was automatic and back to normal. It's kind of getting through that first one, but both of those, I mean, that first heat in the games, and then opening ceremonies are both probably my two favorite memories.
And what happened what was the difference in the second time around? You made the Olympics the next game.
Yeah. So I left the sport for a little bit, and then 9/11 happened, and the games are at home, Salt Lake City, and I thought, man, I'm still I'm still young enough. I'm still in good shape. I would really love to represent my country again. And so, came out of retirement and made that team. And it was interesting, because it was, in a lot of ways, it was smaller because it was at home. But it's not, it's never small. But I remember, again, walking out to the line for my first heat, and it felt small because I saw people I recognized, people I knew that were at the start.
Yeah.
And I didn't recognize anyone except the coaches and the staff in '98, and so that was interesting, seeing family up on the line that close, and so it kind of made it feel a little more. A little smaller, I guess.
Do people feel gypped if they don't get to go to a different, like when I know it's great to have it in your home, but I mean, it's a whole nother experience when you're traveling to a country you maybe never even heard of prior to the Winter Olympics.
No, I mean, I can see that possibly in sports where you don't travel around the world normally, but on a regular season in winter sports in particular, you're all over the world. You're all over Europe and Asia, and and that's one of the things that drew me to it. When I saw the schedule for the World Cup team, I was like, I haven't been anywhere, and look at all these countries. How do I pass that up? So that was a big draw. So I think the fact that, we competed, internationally all the time, we didn't, I mean, it was a big plus competing at home.
Yeah, I could see that. How'd you guys do in the second go around?
Well, I was just in the 2-man and we got 9th. So, I don't regret it or anything. However,
you could have done better. I mean, how good could you have been if you had your best run?
Well, I mean, with my driver, Brian Scheimer, he was doing better in the 2-man than the 4-man that season. And so, if given the choice, would I rather do 2-man or 4-man with him at those games? It would have been 2-man for sure. So I was really happy that I got to push him in the 2-man. The 4-man, we weren't expected to medal, and both our 4-man teams medaled in 2002, and so that was huge. So I clearly bet on the wrong horse in that one, and it hurt a little bit, watching all my teammates on the podium and wishing that I was with them. But
do the teams get a medal? I mean, do you get a medal of being part of USA, or it's only the people who participate?
No, it's just
in the middle, or no?
It's just it's the same guys that compete unless there's an injury or something. But no, there's no. You don't get a medal if you're just on the team, and it wouldn't mean anything if you did. So no, I was happy for those guys, and I laugh about it now, but felt a little sick at the time. That, man, I really wish I was
I bet.
with those guys celebrating like that.
Then you become CEO, and USA wins gold, right?
Yeah, that was amazing as well. 2010 in Vancouver. We 4-man got gold, and that was just amazing. And I mean, we were good enough. We certainly had it within us, and after 3 heats, we had like half-second lead. And I'm saying we, just because we all felt like we were part of that team, and but I don't know that I've ever been so nervous as I was waiting for the 4th heat. And I'm down at the bottom of the hill where the sled's going to come up, and I'm just walking, pacing. We had a big lead, but this is a track that can bite you at any moment. Their great teams are crashing all the time on this track.
Yeah.
And you can take nothing for granted. And this is, it's been 62 years since we won a gold in the 4-man. And so, you certainly couldn't take it for granted. And when they came down and they got through the 50-50 curve 13, that was the big one. It was just the greatest feeling in the world, and just so proud of those guys and the coaches and the athletes, and it was an amazing experience to be a part of.
What is it about USA in bobsled, and maybe in some winter where we're not as good as the rest of the world? What's the advantage? Is it that you're just more money, they're training from a younger age? What do you think the difference is? Well,
I mean, a number of factors, and those certainly have come into play at various times. For us, it was, there's 3 components to a successful bobsled team and skeleton as well, and that's the driving ability of the pilot, the pushing ability of, at the start, and the equipment. And so for years we've always had great athletes. So we've always been competitive at the start with the push. It's been hit or miss on the pilots, on their ability. And the equipment is where we struggled for a very long time. And Jeff Bodine got involved with from NASCAR after I think the 92 games. And so it takes a while to be able to build a quality sled, but eventually those sleds were competitive, and that's what we used in 2010. And so we had everything that we needed, but there's a fourth component, which is, I think, underappreciated, and that is the mental side. Okay. And there was almost a culture of, okay, in the US, we're the sleeping giant. We're the team with a lot of potential that never quite gets it done at the games. And I credit the 2002 performance for all the athletes, skeleton, bobsled, women's, men, for getting the US over that hump. And it really started with, on the bobsled side with Jill Bakken, when she won gold in women's bobsled. It was a new sport in 2002. But it was almost like, oh, this is possible. We can do this in the US. And it, believing that you've got the ability to do it it's huge. You have to believe it yourself, and you have to know that your coaches believe that you can do it. And if you've got both of those, then, it comes down to the work you put in and the skills that you're bringing to the race. And we left 2002 having that, and we haven't lost that. We certainly didn't, do as well in 2018 as we did in 2014. But that belief isn't gone. It takes a while, I think, to lose that. And so, if we get the right combinations of, drivers, pushers, and equipment, there's no reason that the U.S. shouldn't be back on the podium.
And so you were track. Herschel Walker came on. He was all fast, speed, strength. Lolo Jones, track. Is that something is that a recruiting pitch today, or?
Yeah, it is. We look for athletes from any background, and they really come from all over the place. With the women, even more so, volleyball players and softball players, certainly track athletes, rugby, but for the on the men's side for bobsled, it's typically football and track are the two biggest by far, just because those sports are you're already trying to identify those types of athletes, and so if we're able to see the potential from those two sports, probably more than any other, and so you still have athletes that are coming from track and football or both those backgrounds.
Obviously you can't go without talking about the movie Cool Runnings, famous bobsled movie, the Jamaican bobsled team. We talked about this a little bit before. I love that movie. It's got a great combination of comedy, obviously loosely based on a true story. It's just really hits you in the heartstrings, and just a heartwarming story of perseverance, and there's just a lot of storylines in there, but there's a lot of truth to some of these storylines. Same with you, like you have world-class athletes who can't make it in something for whatever reason. This guy got tripped, or but they have that characteristics and drive and the ability, and people see that in them to say, you can do this. the crazy thing about the Olympics is, look, it's once every 4 years, like, and you're not guaranteed that you're going to be okay or young enough or whatever to participate in the next one. In a lot of these sports, we're not talking about basketball or soccer, but even then there's an age thing, so much pressure on you to perform, either to qualify or when you're there, because you never know if you're going to get back there again. What do you think about the movie? What was really, what hit home for you about that movie as someone who it could have been you in there?
It's a great movie. And it's I hate to say it, but for most people, their knowledge of the sport still comes from that movie.
Yeah.
Just because it's not something you see every day, you get to watch it in the games, and that's kind of it. And it's available, in the winter, if you're interested in finding it. But it's not football. It's not one of the big sports. So, it's a really entertaining movie. I think it was good. And there's a line in it that I've always loved, and it resonates, beyond the sport and beyond bobsled, but it certainly makes sense for Olympic athletes. And it's John Candy, and he's talking to the main character, the driver, and they're talking about the competition and his need for a gold medal. And he says something to the effect of, look, if you're not enough without the gold medal, you'll never be enough with it. And there's some real wisdom in that, because it's one of the mistakes that I see with athletes, that they build up the Olympics and that experience to be, once I make the team or once I get that medal, it's over, right? I have arrived, and I'm on, the rest of my life is set, and I'm going to be happy and fulfilled. And as humans, we're not wired that way. It's certainly a great experience, and the medal, I imagine, is everything that you would expect it to be, but that journey's over, and you got a lot of life in front of you, and just because you accomplished one great thing doesn't mean you're going to feel fulfilled for the rest of your life, right? So
and for 90% of the athletes, whatever, I don't know, it's a high number, just making the team and being there is the accomplishment, because there's people who go and they don't know, but there's little chance that they feel they're going to be able to get up on that podium, right?
Right.
Everyone thinks they have a shot, but realistically speaking, it's not in the cards for most of the athletes who go there.
Right, and that's true. And something that I hope is still true today. I've been to the last three games, but I don't spend much time in the village. But as an athlete, I remember there was such a contrast in the vibe in the village with the athletes versus the way the media was talking about the games. And it seemed really weird at the time whenever they would give a report on the medal count, because when you're there, when you're in the village and as an athlete, it's really clear about the Olympic values, and you're living it, right? You're experiencing this, and it's about the world coming together through sport as a competition, but also a celebration, and you're bonding, and you're going to go out and give your all, and maybe that's a medal, and maybe it's not, but the point is going out and doing your best, and that really is enough,
that was the big thing about Cool Runnings that really stuck with me, is John Candy cheating, right? And then acknowledging he wishes he wouldn't have done it because it really should have been enough for him.
Yeah. Yeah. And it's true. I mean, I have no regrets about my competitions, and I never look back at track and field as, well, that was a waste of time. You know what? I gave up. I should have been working, should have been building a career. And it's like, yeah, but
it got you where you were. I mean, without the track and field, you're probably not there.
Yeah, probably not. But if it didn't lead to that, it's still okay. Because I know that it was honest, and I put it on the line, and I went for it, and I have no regrets, and I never have to wonder, man, what would have happened if I would have focused on track and field after college? Could I have made the Olympics? And so you got to have the guts to go for it and fail, and
you got to be honest with yourself always.
Right, and you're always gonna learn, you're gonna grow, and so anytime you go for something, you shouldn't regret it. It's the stuff that you don't go for.
If I could go back and tell you would have qualified for the Summer Olympics, but you would have missed the Winter Olympics, and that wouldn't happen. It's I don't know how anyone answers that. Do you ever think about that? Like, I'd rather have been in the Summer Olympics than the Winter Olympics?
I don't imagine in those terms. Of course you fantasize about what the Summer Olympics would have been like. But I also think about, well, what if I'd have focused on baseball? What would that career have looked like? What if I focused on football? And as an athlete, you wonder about other sports, and you kind of fantasize. And there's look, you got to be a bit of a dreamer to think you can be the best in the world at anything. And, you can't be too grounded to think, okay, yeah, I'm going to go for this because the chances are really high. No, they're not. They're really low. You're probably not going to make it. But hey, if you're a dreamer, and you want to put the effort in, you're going to learn so much about yourself. And those are the things that you can apply to life afterwards, because you challenge yourself in ways that you've never had to challenge yourself before.
This is another weird question, I guess. What sport would you encourage a young person, man or woman, to participate in? I don't want to say the easiest way, but to think, that would be something that you can do because there's maybe a better chance of being great. Like right now, there's a real big shortage of women golfers. So there's a ton of colleges out there looking for women to play golf.
Right.
And, you got to encourage,
it's a tough question, because you have to be drawn to the sport, right? It has to kind of play to your strengths. And if you can plug someone into golf, but if they don't love the sport, they're not going anywhere.
Not going to be
just as far as I love gymnastics. My daughter, she competes for UCLA on their team, and it's a great sport to get into, in spite of all the problems that we've seen recently. But for the individual, it's I think more athletes start in gymnastics and can transition to other sports than probably anything else, because you're able to build strength and this physical literacy, it's called, where you can apply skills to other sports. But you see a lot of what's that?
Mentally, gymnastics is kind of similar with the bobsled. Like one tiny mistake could throw off everything, and it's done.
Right, and even more so the precision, for gymnastics and figure skating. I put them kind of in the same bucket like that. Look, you're building your body, and you're building strength, and you're hand-eye coordination and you just your awareness, body awareness. It all gets kind of refined, and so you see, a lot of female pole vaulters started as gymnasts, aerial skiers started as gymnasts, weightlifters started as gymnasts. So it's a great sport to start with.
What we got two more questions, and we'll let you go. You're still a part of the bobsled and skeleton, right, on the international level. What's the state of the sport overall and for the U.S.?
So, so I'm the vice president of sport for the International Bobsleigh and Skeleton Federation. Interesting trivia, I guess. It's really just the U.S. and Jamaica that call the sport bobsled instead of bobsleigh.
Bobsleigh.
Yep. And so, internationally, it's I call it bobsleigh. But yeah, I've been doing that since 2013, and we got some exciting stuff coming up. For the first time, we've introduced women's monobob, which is just a one-person bobsled, and that's the first time it's ever been competed in the games, and so we'll be seeing that in Beijing, it's a challenging sport to grow because it's expensive. You don't have tracks in a lot of places around the world, and if you don't have a track, it makes it even more challenging to build teams and get the training in. So warm weather climates are definitely difficult, and even in the U.S. we have 2 tracks, but hard to have a youth program because you have to kind of tap into the kids that live close enough to come and train on the track.
That's small pool.
Yeah, it's a small pool, and so it's difficult to get huge. In the U.S., coming into the next games, they're still very strong on the women's side. The men's side, they're going to be competitive at the push. They got some pilots that have a lot of potential, and they're getting better each year. And it's just going to be kind of a race against the clock. Are they going to be good enough to be competitive at the at the Olympic level? It was a big blow to lose Steve Holcomb. That was tough, mentally and performance wise as well. And a guy like that doesn't come along, every day. He's more like once in a lifetime. And so they've got some rebuilding to do, and that's across the board. You're always developing pilots and new athletes, and it takes a long time. I mean, as a push athlete, 2 years you can be an Olympian. As a driver, maybe 4 in the women's. In the men's, maybe 6. Probably
the life of an athlete in the Olympics.
Yeah, it takes a lot of trips to get really good in the sport as a driver. So they've got some development to do.
All right. Well, we went a little overtime here, but really appreciate your time. We'll let you go on the same question we ask everyone at the end. You got 24 hours you could spend with anybody in the world. They have to be living, and you can't be related to them. Who are you picking, and what are you guys going to do? We're going to make it happen for someone, for some of our guests. We're going to try and make it happen. I'll do my best. Some have seem to be easier than others.
So they have to be living. I missed that part.
Yeah, they have to be living. Unless you can find a way to bring people back from the dead, then you could pick. I haven't figured that out yet.
Who would I like to spend time with? I would love to spend time with Jordan Peterson.
Jordan Peterson. Okay. And what are you guys going to do?
We're gonna talk. Probably drink some good wine, and I'm gonna ask him 1,000 questions.
There you go. All right, on the list. We really appreciate your time today. It's fascinating to hear about the Olympic journey, which is, you're part of a fraternity that is it's big, but it's not that big. It's a one percenter type thing in my eyes, and a truly incredible accomplishment to make an Olympic team, even more so when it's not something that you started out to do. So just really enjoyed hearing more about it. And we'll have to have you back on again. There's just so much doctorate and how does this relate to Home Depot and Ace and hardware and all of that stuff. We'll have you on again to talk about that, but really enjoyed hearing your story today, and look forward to speaking with you again.
All right. Well, I enjoyed it, Matt. Thanks for having me.
Yeah. Well, the last thing, tell everyone how they can get in touch with you or support what you're doing.
You can find me on LinkedIn and reach out and message me, and that's probably the best way to get a hold of me.
There we go. Darrin Steele, U.S. Olympian. And have a great day and rest of the week and weekend, and we'll talk soon.
All right. Thanks, Matt.
Thanks, Darrin. Bye.
Bye.